Alright guys, Unit 2, Part 3, Part 4 soon to come. Trust me on this one. Yes, Nicole, I'm talking to you. Let's get right to this. First thing we want to do is go backwards just a little bit. I had mentioned liberalism and conservatism in the last video. I want to talk about criticisms of the liberals, criticisms of the conservatives first. So the number one criticism of liberals is that they rely too much on government. They are for big government. Why is this their number one criticism? It's because if you take a look down here in green, it prevents the individual from becoming self-reliant. And this is huge. What this has done is what the major argument here is that liberals have extended the government too far, too vast, it's too big, and people have become dependent on the government to solve all of their problems, which making a bigger government has caused problems, and relying on the government has caused problems. So if you take a look down here at the bottom in red, you see that the basic philosophy behind the criticism of the liberals, that too much dependence on government corrupts the spirit. The individual no longer wants to be self-reliant. They want to be dependent. And this goes against the basic rights and freedoms that were supposed to be the founding principles of the formation of the government. On the flip side, the conservatives, one of the biggest criticisms of conservatives is the fact that they're hypocrites. And that's what's being said there at number one. They are for extending the reach of the government and making government bigger if it suits their needs. But they will scream to high heaven any other time that the government doesn't need to grow. Other criticism is that, and it goes back to number one here, but deregulation, typically conservatives are for deregulation, and they think, oh, it's going to be great, it's going to be positive, until something really negative happens, like the financial collapse in 2008, which we're still currently recovering from. In that case, then you find a lot of conservatives, backtracking and then going to number one, where they'll try and extend the government to make up for the mistakes that they made with their ideas of deregulation. Finally, a criticism that seems to just kind of stick to the conservatives is the fact that back in the 60s they seemed to be opposed to civil rights laws and regulation, and more recently things like affirmative action, which, if you don't know what affirmative action is, go ahead, take a look in your textbook, find the chapter on civil rights. You can read for yourself what affirmative action is. But people feel that the conservatives are against this, and this is a major criticism. Really what the conservatives have done against civil rights and affirmative action is they've tried to do number two. They've tried to deregulate them, kind of strip away some of the rules and regulations of both civil rights and affirmative action, because they felt that it was weakening the system. It was causing people to be dependent upon the government. So this is where you find that back and forth between the conservatives and the liberals. Is it better to take action, grow the government, and help the people, or is it better to let the people work it out for themselves and grow on their own? That general argument back and forth has really stuck out over time between the liberals and conservatives. So there's three other major schools of thought that help us form our ideology. You've got the socialists and you've got the communists out there. Socialism is created by Karl Marx, and he really created it as both an economic and government system, and it was supposed to be a midway between capitalism and communism. All that stuff is right up there. However, how does this affect our ideology, our beliefs, and our values about government? Well, socialism is a specific point on that scale of how do you feel about government. Do you think government should have more of a hand in economics? Do you think they should play more of a role and have more control over the government system, is what we're really looking at. A lot of people go far away from this socialist idea, this idea that there should be an even distribution of wealth. That's probably the most dominant characteristic of socialism. If you think that equal distribution of wealth is fantastic, everybody should be equal, so forth and so on, you're moving more along those lines of where your ideology, your beliefs are held about what government should do, shouldn't do. It's a major thing. If you are so opposed to this equal distribution of wealth idea, it really speaks to where you stand, and you'll see in just a little bit, you might go so far one way that you just don't want the government. Again, communism works the same way as socialism in the sense that it's a point to look at, a point of reference to look at when you talk about your beliefs and values in government. Do you think that the government needs to play more of a hand? How much of a hand? Some people truly do believe that the government should basically be like a puppeteer. They should be in control and tell the people what to do, when to do it, so that the people are free to do the other things that they want to do in life. Remember, one of the main reasons people started a representative government like we currently have is so that they didn't have to trouble themselves with the little things that occur within their society, their community. You're probably more interested in what's going to happen on Halloween or maybe this coming weekend than you are about the need to fix traffic lights down your street or the need to upgrade the power grid in the county or something like that. That's why you have elected officials. A lot of people believe that, hey, that's what the government's for. The government should take care of just about everything, so I'm free to just focus on my friends, my family, so forth and so on. Now, the final reference point as to ideology is going to be what I like to call the weirdos. For some reason, I can truly see Luke right here as a libertarian. If you look up here in red with my little asterisks, this really is them. This sums them up. They oppose almost every single government program. They want to deregulate the government, basically break the government down completely. These people are probably Darwin to a T, right? They really do see things as for survival of the fittest here. I put this in here, really they're the same thing. Whether you say they favor or oppose, it's one of those philosophical points of view. But they would like to see massive, and when I say massive, I don't mean cut the government in half. I mean strip away about 75% of all government and their spending. They would be really in favor of that kind of thing. They would want an end to the bureaucracy, which goes back to that first little point. And how do they view military? Military is necessary. They favor a military, but a limited military only to protect the country, which is funny because these guys, this is probably the only point that I really agree with them, these guys would shut down the country's borders. They would basically put the military all along this country and say, look, the people who are here, they'll work it out for themselves, nobody else comes in, this is it. They would settle things that way. They're really, really, really opposed, and this is what they're known for. They're so opposed to the U.S.'s involvement in the United Nations. They see this as the symbol of the overextension of government, that they've run away with their power, that the government has no business being anywhere but in the country that has formed it. They would also really oppose the regulatory laws that exist, things like mandatory seatbelt, helmet laws, drinking age, driving restrictions, all of those things. These guys would really be against it, hence why I said these guys are like Darwin and his survival of the fittest. These guys have nothing to do with morality. This is where they really separate themselves from the conservatives and the ultra-conservatives out there. A lot of people get confused when they see this, shrink the government, cut back on regulation stuff. They think, oh, you're a conservative. Nope. What really separates them is this morality stuff. Remember that a key characteristic of the conservatives is their desire to regulate morality. So you find them getting involved with regulation with things like abortion and pornography and that kind of stuff. How strong are these guys? Listen, every single presidential ballot from the time there were ballots and everybody started voting, you have seen a libertarian candidate on every single ballot in every single state, every single presidential election. That says something, that there's a good grouping of these people throughout the country. So real quick, be careful how you use the words liberal and conservative, because if you're talking about a European nation, when somebody starts saying a liberal, they mean the original sense of liberal. So they would be our conservatives here. So in places around the world, liberal doesn't mean the same thing here in the U.S. as it does there. Only us and those crazy Canucks really think that liberal is left. Another big thing, no matter what I tell you in this whole thing, there are certain events that do occur that can throw everything else off. They can negate the role of the family. They can negate some of the other things that I'm going to talk about: education level, gender, marriage, all that happy stuff. All of that can be negated by a simple event like World War II or Vietnam. Big war, and what does it do? People love the government. Sure, grow the government. Vietnam, big war, and what happens? People go, no way, no way. So they really start distrusting the government. Take a look at the top here. I want to wrap this thing up. I know I'm being long-winded, but our political ideology has so many factors beyond mass media, beyond the family. We've got religion, we've got gender, we've got everything like that. And if we skip down to this bottom bullet right here, there is no widespread or solid position for a liberal or a conservative. That's why you find the Republican parties, the Republican and Democratic parties, have such a wide array of people. You can find people in both parties that have characteristics that are conservative and characteristics that are liberal. You're never going to find one that is just a solid base. This is what they are. They're all conservative individuals on every single topic. And that's what really separates politics and policy making and the whole operation of the government in the United States. It sets it apart from all other countries, whether they're democracies or not. And it can also speak to the fact that why we have issues in the country. If you take a look at this chart, I'm going to be using it in class a couple of times. I'm going to put it on part 4 as well. And these are just some of the things. I want you to become a little familiar with this because it's going to go into voting behaviors. So quickly taking a look at things like gender. When people mention gender, they're going to focus on females. Why? Because females didn't get the official right to vote until the passing of the 19th Amendment. There is definitely a clear correlation made through time on gender for the political parties, at least. When women received the right to vote in the 1920s and continued into the 1930s, women are going to vote Republican. They will register Republican and vote Republican. But this makes sense. The Republicans are in power when the 19th Amendment is passed. The Republicans continue in power. They have this sense of loyalty there. Although they like FDR, you're going to find a lot of women say, hey, I like FDR and what he stands for and the ideas he's coming out with. They're still going to vote Republican. That sense of loyalty remains. It isn't until the mid to late 60s that you're going to see this huge shift for women. Women are going to become what we consider today much more liberal. They are going to start aligning with the Democratic Party. They're going to vote Democrat. The number one reason that they're going to switch over from Republican to Democrat is because the Democrats have taken up the issues that they most care about, right? On the opposite side, in the 1960s, you see a mass movement of men from being Democrat to switching to the Republican Party. Even today, when you look at things, you will see many more women that consider themselves to be Democrat or liberal than you do men. This is a clear trend, right? If you take a look down here in blue, Women's Movement America, American Politics, this is the reason that you see a lot of women on the Democrat side or the liberal side, the ideas that they're looking to improve or the topics that the majority of women care about are going to fall on the liberal spectrum, right? But take a look here at the very end of this. The women really are looking to make an impact on what has been and continues to be a very much male-dominated system. Their perspective is different than a man's perspective is all I'm trying to tell you here. So a little bit more on gender. There's something called a gender gap, and this is that difference between men and women in voting. Some people question if this is real or not. To a degree, it is real, and then to a degree you can ignore it. Really what we see is that it comes down to specific